We're going to be talking about pricing strategies for product managers. Not only are we going to dive into various actual pricing strategies, but we're also going to talk about the importance of getting a seat at the pricing table. Move on to the next slide, Kenny.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Today, it's going to be me. My name is Rena Lexon. I'm the CEO of Productside, calling in from sunny Miami, Florida. And Kenny, why don't you introduce yourself really quick?
Sure. I am a lifetime product manager, director, head of product based out here in Seattle, Washington for about the past 25 or so years. I actually began my product management career at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then made that rare transition from chicken to technology. I basically started some of the early product management practices at Microsoft, and since have led product teams at places like Microsoft and Amazon and a host of startups up here in the Seattle area. I moved to what I call Career 2.0 at Productside about 5 years ago, and now I get to help scores of product teams help make the journey to product management better, make that journey to better management of their products.
I like to say doing product better, right?
Yeah,
That's
there
our
you
goal.
go.
I think, Kenny, what I've heard is if any of you ever get the opportunity to talk to Kenny directly, what did we say? Ask him about the spork. Is that it?
Yeah, the
Yes,
sport. Yeah,
the spork.
the
Okay.
sport.
So for those of you who are joining us, I hope you know who we are, but we are Productside, formerly known as 280 Group. We pride ourselves on really being an outcome-driven partner. That means we're really not about, when we work with clients, we're not about a transactional engagement at all. We're really about what are the results? What are the behaviors we're able to impact and change? And that is why we offer a really complete solution. So we offer advisory, org structure. I talked about this. Org structure impacts how product managers get their job done, context, culture, all of this, super important to getting true behavior change at the organizational level. That's what we do, and that's why people work with us. They also work with us because we have awesome people like Kenny Kranzler over here who actually lead our engagements. All right, so if this is your first time joining one of our webinars, I said it at the beginning, I'm going to repeat myself. Kenny and we have a lot of great content, but we want to hear from you. Okay, so please ask your questions. You could do so in the chat. You can also hit Q&A if you want to do it anonymously, no problem. But please ask questions. If I see a relevant question, I'll actually bring that in while we're talking so we can address it right then and there, but we'll also leave time for Q&A at the end. I'm going to take the time right now to answer the most common question we get, which is, can I watch this recording? Yes, everybody can watch it. We're going to be posting it later today. It's going to be on our website. And so you'll get a link to the recording after the webcast is over. And we want to also take this time to invite you to join our LinkedIn group. So our LinkedIn group now has, I think, over 62,000 product professionals. It's quite active. If you're looking to learn about product management, obviously Productside has a lot of great resources like webinars and templates and tools and toolkits, all the good stuff there. But you can also learn a lot from your peers by sharing best practices, networking. Reach out if you're in this group. Feel free to reach out to people. I do so as well. There's just a really, really healthy community of product managers from all over the world here. And Kenny, over to you to kick us off with this webinar.
Super. So today we'll be covering a few things, as Rena had mentioned. Specifically, I want to talk about how and why a product manager should get involved in pricing. Whether they're invited to that party or not, they should attend. I'll also talk about some concepts around how to think about pricing and some strategies you might think about employing. And I'll put in some examples when you are inevitably and hopefully invited to that raving pricing party. All right, so let's start with a poll to see where the group is today. So with regard to your participation in the products that you're working on, how involved are you in the pricing of your product offerings?
So the answers, I hope right here, are pretty self-explanatory, whether you do have control or you're completely out of the loop, you don't even have the ability to suggest it. Or in some cases, if you're, for example, a distribution partner, you might not have a price or have it be determined outside of your company. All right. Okay. So I'm not disheartened by these
I'm not
results,
surprised.
right?
Let's put it that
I'm not
way.
surprised, but let's say we are all in this together because it looks like only 6% or fewer have control over pricing. But almost a third combined with that leads and collaborates with other teams. About half
But half are out of the loop. That's not
out of the
good.
loop. Yeah. I'm
Here,
going to
should we
share
share
these
the
results.
results?
Yeah.
Oh, you shared them. Okay,
You
good.
are not alone here, guys.
Yeah. They're in the right seat for now, at least to hear what I'm about to spout. So that's good.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you. Yeah, as I said, lots of variability and participation in the group. So let's start talking about some overall concepts about products and pricing, and it'll lead to those half the people that are out of the loop about how hopefully they should be in the loop and what we can do to help get them in the loop and what they do once they're in the loop. So think about it. One of the main objectives of a product manager is to maximize your product's value for the organization, value for customers, value for stakeholders, value for partners, right? And if we look at the basic equation around value, we see we cannot define value without a clear understanding of its cost to the customer, including its price, right? So many of us, we're busy at work enhancing and optimizing the features and capabilities of our product, all of which enhance the numerator of this equation you see. But customers, they view value as this whole equation. And a crucial part of customers seeing value in your products is that denominator, or the cost of the product. Think about it. If I offered you a trip around the world on the most exclusive luxury liner with the most elite service on board, stopping along the way at the best ports of call where you serve the best meals available in those locales, and your every need is taken care of, you'd probably tell me that's a pretty good deal. Until I tell you the cost of this once in a lifetime trip costs about $5 million per person. Now, some of you may still think this is a valuable trip, but I'm betting most of you would be scared off and not ready to go for this offering, despite the high quality and the world-class service that it provides. Now, cost, it consists of more than just the product price. Now, the product price, it's a key component of a customer's valuation of the cost of the product, particularly for transactional products that don't necessarily have a long-lasting life. But in many cases, particularly for B2B products that are meant to last for a longer time period, customers incur and include in their value equation for that product offering additional costs related to the acquisition and the usage of the product. They likely include such costs as ongoing service, maintenance, implementation, upgrades. But that being said, for a lot of consumers, the most immediate component of the cost is that price of the product. So logic follows that a product manager really can't perform their role of delivering value to the business or the customer without having a role in pricing strategy.
Kenny, I
Yeah.
wonder, I know we're going to go into tips, but I just had this idea. So I'm going to ask you, for product managers who are struggling and are out of the loop, can they just take a screenshot of the value equation to their leadership and say, you want me to do this? How am I going to do it?
It's a good start, right? Go talk to leaders and say, hey, you want me to be in charge of the value for our customers? I need to be part of that equation. So I need both parts of that, right? Yeah. Good start. All right, now, price isn't always just one thing for a product. A lot of times there are multiple prices for your product offering. So I want to let's do another poll to get an understanding from this group how many different prices there are for your product. So take a look at the choices here. Pick the one that best explains how your product's priced. And again, if none of the 4 choices works for your product, choose option 5. But put in the chat what special circumstances impact the different prices of your product offering.
Yeah. Okay. So again, choose the best one that fits. I would say maybe 90% of maybe you have one product that could be complicated, but if most of them are not, choose the one most likely to mirror what you experience. All right. Thank you. I don't know what to do with this data, Kenny, because
No, it looks
about 30% have it negotiated per customer.
and again, this matches the real world, I think, right? Is that
Yeah.
we tend to find that there's not just one price. You're not just defining one price. And so it's a complicated discussion that usually involves various places in the organization, right?
Yeah.
So when we had in the original poll, it's not just you that determines pricing. You're going to work with sales, you're going to work with marketing, you're going to work with finance, all those places in order to figure out what pricing is, right? It's not such a mess, David. It's the real world. All
I will
right.
say, I feel like the price negotiate item per customer is something I think sales teams want. But if everyone just pays the same price and there's no discussion, sometimes that's an easier sell.
It is. Yeah. But we'll talk about it. Even in those scenarios, you're part of the equation too.
Should we let Talman talk?
Yeah, go ahead, Talman.
All right. Unless that was an accident, you can, I think you can unmute yourself. Okay, maybe that was an accident.
That was an accident.
Write in your question if you still have one. Otherwise, I'm gonna lower your hand. Okay.
There you go. Thanks. Whoa, hold it. All right. All right. So as I mentioned, and as we saw, pricing by its core nature, it's an involved process. And a product usually has more than one price, as we saw. And in most of the cases we saw, can have many prices. Now, there's often a notion of what's a standard or a list price of a product. Sometimes we call that MSRP or manufacturer's suggested retail price. But there's a host of adjustments that are made to this price before it's determined in what the customer and the actually pays to acquire the product. There's volume adjustments, channel adjustments, location considerations, promotions, timing and payment discounts. And if there are distributors or resellers involved in the process, the company that creates the product may have limited control over what the distributing parties actually wind up charging the end customer. Now, moreover, there's laws and regulations around pricing and a lot of jurisdictions that reduces the flexibility a company can have in determining the price of the product. Now, I don't mention all this complexity around pricing to make it seem even more intimidating, but it's likely necessary, as I mentioned, that multiple roles and various perspectives are needed to determine a price or a set of prices. And so even if a product manager is the clear owner of the pricing of the product, they'll need to get input from a variety of stakeholders, both inside and outside their organization to properly price their products. These are all considerations that must be made in formulating a pricing strategy. Okay, now that we have an understanding of sort of the overall viewpoint, hold on, the overall viewpoint and some of the basic complexities in pricing of products, let's dig in a little and consider what role a product manager should play in the pricing of their products. Now, I saw in our first poll, I'm not proposing you should be the sole owner of your product price, but some product managers are, at least for that standard or the MSRP or manufacturer's suggested retail price. But let's consider some of the various aspects in pricing our products and where a product manager might fit into some of those decisions. So when it comes to product pricing and strategy, a product manager will usually work with at least three separate disciplines within the organization: marketing or product marketing, sales, and finance. Now, a product manager's specific ownership, their specific responsibility, it'll vary depending on things like company size, what industry you're in, or what your path is to bringing some of your products to customers. However, as I mentioned at the start, organizations can and should benefit from that product manager's insight on what the pricing strategy should look like and what customers will gain from the product. So a simplistic model for defining a product manager's role in pricing is sort of what I've laid out here. Still simplistic, but at least provides some guidance for us. Now, the product managers, they should work with leadership and work with executives on product and price management to define what role the product plays in our overall corporate strategy and the impact that corporate strategy has on our approach for pricing the product. Product prices are premium versus competition, in line with similar products, versus a value offering, right? And once you get that strategy and you start to build an understanding of the product's price and of the product's customers and success in the market, the product manager, they should propose so what the standard or the list price for that product ought to be. Now, we saw a lot when it comes to determine that price that a specific customer pays for the offering. A lot of times in B2B scenarios, that customer price is often subject to negotiation. This is where your sales or your sales operation team, they often have the final say in determining how that list price might be adjusted for a specific customer. But even then, the product manager, they can help the sales team with insights into scenarios beyond the individual sale, such as how competitors or regulators impact that decision. And what it might be the benefits of, hey, maybe we should have more consistent pricing and not do deep discounting for each account, right? Lastly, there's probably opportunities for timing or promotional incentives to spur or drive sales for a product at a specific point in time, particularly as we start to look across product offerings. This
So
is
Kenny,
usually, yeah.
yeah, Kenny, I think at this point it's probably good just to say that there's a lot of people involved in pricing, and there's
Yeah.
also different, I would say, methods in your organization for creating pricing. So there's something we called at the beginning was pricing committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what the pricing committee essentially is trying to do the top half of this. And then there's something called the deal desk
Yeah.
oftentimes, which is the defining the price adjustments. And I wanted to bring that up because I did want to say there are going to be potentially situations where product managers may not be as involved. And we see that more often on the deal desk scenario, where you have sales leadership really defining, this AEs at this level get 5% authority, and to get 25%, you have to have approval, and then anything above that, then you have to go back to the pricing committee. So pricing is complicated in organizations, and product managers may not have, I would say you should get visibility into all of it, but even with the deal desk stuff, I don't think it's not common for product managers to be there. Am I right?
A lot of times when you, especially bigger deals, when you want to get involved, it's good for you at least to be part of that discussion, right? It isn't going to
Sure.
be, hey, we want to give, there's this huge customer that's going to, fundamentally change our perception in the marketplace. We want to give them a 50% discount. You don't have veto power as a product manager, but you might say, hey, here's what the impact of that 50% discount may have on our 10 other customers that are, or our perception in the marketplace, or some of the regulations we may have, or
I,
those kind of things,
I
right?
agree with you. I think those decisions are made at the pricing committee level. What I'm
Yeah,
saying here is product managers probably don't want to be involved in every single
no.
pricing decision at the company. And that is usually the price adjustments.
Yeah,
Sometimes you do want to be involved with promotional
yeah,
pricing.
right. Yeah, as I said, there
Right.
might be guidelines and hey, here's the degrees of freedom that a sales team has to work with. You should help in defining some of those as well, right? So whether you pick 10% or 11%, I'm not asking you to be part of it, right?
Yeah.
Right. And again, there's promotional pricing that the marketing team's usually responsible for, right? Um, but again, the marketing team should still look back to the product manager. They'll have a good understanding of where the overall pricing strategy of the product fits, what a specific promotion might impact that product. Again, they're probably not the one being the ultimate decision, but you at least should be consulted in some of those discussions as well. Makes sense. All right. Now that you all have a better notion of where and how a product manager might impact the different prices for your product, let's dig into how you go about making some of those decisions about what the actual price should be, right? As I noted, the starting point is that clear understanding of the strategy of your business and how the business thinks about pricing in general, be in comparison to competition, relative to customer inputs and negotiations, what that high level strategy would be. What I'm going to talk about here is some basic tactics to think about how you go about doing pricing, right? There are some basic strategies that you should know and be aware of, right? Think about some of these pricing strategies, sort of the navigational tools that you use to sort of steer your product ship through uncharted water, right? Each strategy acts as sort of a compass, right? Directs the course of the ship or your product in this case along what among many diverse routes, which one you're going to take towards the goal of reaching hopefully that island of profitability. And again, These aren't exhaustive, but there are some basic product pricing approaches. I'll talk about them each in detail. And either alone or a lot of times you're going to use these in combinations. They cover some of the most common pricing strategies. There's cost-based pricing, value-based pricing, penetration pricing, skimming pricing, premium models, dynamic pricing, and a geographic pricing strategy. So I'll talk about each of those in details, and I'll give a little example of each, where they might be used and how they might be used. All right. First one, cost-based pricing. Here, the price or the of a product or service, it's determined by calculating the total cost of production and then add a markup to cover your desired profit margins. Again, this approach, it focuses on expenses incurred in things like manufacturing, distribution, sales of that product, things like raw materials, labor, overhead costs. And that markup, it's just a percentage added to the total cost to make sure that you make money. Profitability is there, right? Cost-based pricing, it doesn't include things like market demand or customer perception. Centers on covering costs and generating profits based on your expenses in getting that product to the customer. It's a simple strategy, assuming that you have some way to calculate what those direct costs are associated with creating and selling that product. Challenge is it ignores what competitors might be doing. It ignores how customers might be thinking about pricing your pricing or what your offerings are in general. But make sure that you make money.
I feel like
Yeah,
this model is most commonly used where there's a lot of competition in the market. That's where we see this the most. Like materials pricing
yeah,
tends to be in this
yeah,
category.
yeah. I see a lot of manufacturing companies, a lot of
Mhm.
distribution companies. They use this kind of price to use. They use this methodology a lot to determine the price. Interesting. Oracle also uses this for their offerings. They look at the costs, right? They have an extensive range of enterprise products and services for all their database management products, for all their cloud service, for their various business applications. They look at what the costs occurred they have in developing, maintaining, and enhancing some of these offerings. They just add a markup, and the markup varies again depending on product. But they basically look what it is. They make sure they make money on their products, knowing what the cost of sales are, the cost of delivery is, the cost of creating and maintaining that product, and then they make sure they make money, right? So that's one way to think about doing your pricing. Another one, value-based pricing, it's a slightly more strategic approach, right? It really determines the price of a product or a service based on what its perceived value is to its customers, right? It makes sure that you have a clear understanding of the customer's willing to pay for some of the benefits and the unique features that you offer. You don't necessarily look at production costs. You don't necessarily look at competitors, but you look at the willingness of customers to pay and the value you have for customers. It requires a deep understanding of customer needs, right? And a clear way to effectively communicate the product's value proposition and a way for customers and you all to capture some of that value that you're creating for the consumers. Tesla is a good example of this, right? They employ a deep understanding of their potential customers and their willingness to afford and pay for a version of Tesla in determining the prices of their range of electric vehicles. Now, their prices they're higher than most traditional vehicles, but their offerings, they're targeted at those customers who are willing to pay that premium. They have innovative electronic technology. They have superior performance. They have a brand that's out there that's in some way commitment and sustainability, whether you like Elon Musk or not. And they charge a premium. If you look at them versus some of the traditional cars or even versus many electric vehicles, there's a premium you pay for Tesla. Well, customers are getting better technology, better value. They're willing to pay. There's a status symbol applied with Tesla, even though that is going down over time. But Tesla understands that, and they're willing to do that. And that's why they went through the process of as they had developed their technology, as they developed and got more and more mainstream with their technology, they brought their prices down. They're reaching less customers that needed less value. They put less value in, and therefore they brought their prices down. Next one I want to talk about is penetration pricing. And this is a strategy designed to quickly capture a significant market share you're offering a product at an initially lower price than its perceived market value. It works well in industries where competition's intense, a quick market entry is crucial. The lower initial price encourages widespread adoption, creates brand awareness and customer loyalty. The theory behind this is that that low initial price will disrupt existing businesses by luring customers away, right? And once you attract customers with a slower price, you can establish yourselves in the marketplace and start to gain a foothold. And once companies that use this penetration pricing have captured their targeted market share, they can start to raise prices. This allows them to increase profits, and they can start to add value to the product. The challenge is that it may lead to hard times in maintaining the profitability in the long term. And you've got to put some consideration into how that eventual price increase will work, right? This tends to work in scenarios where the following conditions are met. One, your business is using mass marketing and your objective is to get large market share. There isn't a lot of differentiation in the marketplace between products. The product that you offered is not unique or truly innovative. For high quality and really innovative products, you may not want to use penetration pricing. You're looking to get and can capture the benefit of economies of scale, right? Oftentimes where production is done at large scale, right? And that the demand for the product is price elastic, right? Price elasticity of demand is greater than one. Customers have to be price sensitive, right? Charging a lower price has the opportunity to increase demand by a large percentage. Another example.
I feel like we saw a lot of the issues with the long-term profitability with not just Uber and Lyft, but also all the delivery services.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a common one.
Yeah. Yeah. So one, make sure, the price elasticity has to be high, and you have to have the opportunity to eventually start to increase that price over time, or else you're going to be stuck. Some people call it, getting to zero. You don't want to get there, right? Adobe actually used this when they first introduced the Creative Cloud. They used a subscription model. They used a relatively low price, particularly compared to their traditional software licenses, right? It allowed them to quickly attract a fairly broad base of folks who were looking to get to their suite of creative tools. As the user base started to expand and Adobe had a large chunk of folks on the subscription model, they started to introduce premium features. They started to adjust their subscription price upward, right? But they took advantage of that initial penetration pricing to establish, one, a large user base to charge long-term, and enable them to sort of become a dominant player in the subscription-based creativity software market.
Yeah, I think the difference here between the examples I cited with the delivery is that there were actually higher switching costs. Once you're on Adobe Creative Cloud, they actually create all the content is there, right? It's not as easy as just downloading an app on your phone.
Right. There have to be, if there aren't any switching costs, penetration pricing is hard because you can't extract the value of that large install base to start to maintain them and increase the price over time.
Right. And the price sensitivity is really high. So you're going to lose them when you try to raise it.
Exactly. Yeah. The opposite of penetration pricing is skimming pricing, right? Here you're setting a high initial price of a product. Essentially, you're looking to hit the early adopters and some of those customers willing to pay that premium for things like innovation or exclusivity. Again, this tends to be effective for just the opposite type of products, those that have unique features or advanced technology, or at least perception of both of those, right? Over time, that market demand among the early adopters is satisfied. Again, here the price is gradually lowered to attract a broader audience, right? Skimming allows companies to capitalize on the willingness of certain customers to pay a premium for the latest and most innovative products and maintain profitability early on. And while the objective of the penetration pricing that we just talked about is to gain a significant market share quickly, price skimming is more aimed at recovering things like R&D costs and the overall costs of the product quickly before competitors come in and start to force that price down. Once competitors do enter the market, you can start to gradually decrease the price and hopefully keep them away, right? While penetration pricing is usually used to target customers with low purchasing power, price skimming is used to target sort of those higher income customers who tend to be early adopters and who are willing to pay that premium price, right? And unlike penetration pricing, which is used in sort of the price elasticity of highly price elastic demand, price skimming is used in the cases where demand is less elastic, where customers are less sensitive to price and care more about the benefits of the product or its total cost of ownership. Oftentimes here, economies of scale, it's not objective of the firm, at least in the short run, for them. Apple, if we look at them, when they launch a new iPhone model, it usually involves skimming pricing. The latest iPhone is introduced at a high price, catering to those early adopters and the Apple wannabes, right? And over time, the price of that Apple offering starts to come down as new models are released and it becomes sort of last year's technology or whatever it might be. So they want to get those folks that really want an Apple early on, and then can extract maximum revenue from those folks. So that's skimming pricing. All right, let's talk a little bit about some freemium models. And freemium model, it's a pricing strategy that offers a basic version of the product for free. You can almost think about it like penetration in that sense, right? And what you're trying to do is to get a large base of users, right? Then once you have those users, they're enticed to upgrade to a premium or a paid version of the product, which includes either additional functionality or additional features or whatever it might be. This is a very common approach for things like software and digital services. It allows users to experience the product's core functionality before they're committing to a subscription. In fact, premium models probably have become mandatory part of subscription business, right? Some kind of premium model. It is a very prosperous way to get acquiring customers as many as possible. As it says, it enables customers to test before buying, right? That's a rarely failed marketing approach, right? These customers or subscribers, they're more interested in knowing the value once they see it and more likely to be subscribers. And again, while freemium is a business growth tactic that enables you to hook customers by offering a free version of your product, it's slightly different than free trial, right? Key differences is the limitations that are implied in each free version. So with freemium, you have the free product available for all time, but you're limited on features or capabilities of that product. For a free trial, it's just the opposite. You'll likely have access to all the capabilities of the product, but are limited on the time you have that available. Again, freemium, it's best when your product may take longer for customers to see the value, or it's disruptive to the current practices. So you need all customers to be able to experience it before they commit. Advertising is often a component of a freemium product, right? What happens is that application developers, they can monetize their free users through advertisements, and they can start to reap some of the rewards of a subscription when its users don't want to pay for that, don't want to withstand that limitation of having to view an ad anymore, right? So they have an opportunity to leverage those free users for revenue at that point. Spotify, it's one of many examples out there of freemium pricing. Scan the web, you're likely to see thousands of freemiums offered. So Spotify, they price its offering so users can access a free version. It includes advertisements and a more limited set of features, right? They offer a premium version. That's an ad-free experience and adds capabilities like offline listening, enhanced audio quality, all for a subscription fee. Key metrics of Spotify are the rate at which they can convince those free users to upgrade to their premium offering. Rest assured, though, they're still capturing significant revenue from the millions of Spotify users that are listening to the ads in the free version of Spotify. So they get it from both sides, and that's often what happens in long-term premium kinds of opportunities. Okay, let's talk a little bit about dynamic pricing. It's a more flexible strategy. Price of your product, it's continuously adjusted based on a variety of factors, things like demand, supply, competitor pricing, customer behavior, It allows companies to adapt to changing market conditions, oftentimes in real time, where they can optimize the pricing of their product to drive maximum revenue or maximum market share. So this dynamic pricing, which is also called things like surge pricing, demand pricing, time-based pricing, it's where the businesses, they adjust the price of their offering to account mostly for changing demand, right? Again, prevalent in a lot of products. It does require a company that wants to use this approach to quickly and easily alter their prices and has almost near real-time sense for the demand of their offering. Good example, airlines, they shift their seat prices based on seat type, number of remaining seats, and time until the flight. They have pricing committees that are constantly monitoring demand for a specific flight, and they adjust the prices based on their reads of that demand. So that's dynamic pricing. You're going to adjust it based on demand.
So Kenny, this
Yeah,
one is a little different than having multiple price points per customer. Like that's how we had the conversation of them. Like universities, they try to maximize what's under the demand curve, so they
yeah.
optimize for maximum revenue by charging students and families like different prices based on willingness to pay. That's almost
That
it's a
sounds value-based. Well, a little
combination.
bit. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it looks similar to this, but it's different because it's not constantly changing
Right.
based on all of these different factors as a function of those factors.
Yeah,
It's
they
just
can't
one
read demand
factor.
in real
Yeah,
time mostly, right?
yeah,
They can understand different willingness to pay or availability or capability to pay. So they
sure.
do charge differently for different types of customers, but they're not changing it dynamically, right? Like
Hmm.
airlines or Uber, right?
Yeah.
They utilize dynamic pricing, right? People have probably heard the term surge pricing. That's what people call dynamic pricing in the Uber world, right? During periods of high demand, such as rush hour or special events, Uber, they adjust their pricing, right? Encourages more drivers to be available, balancing supply and demand. Turns out that Uber's dynamic pricing model, while it looks nasty, it actually benefits both drivers and riders, right? The drivers, they earn more during peak times. More of them show up. And even as riders, right? You don't think it, but if they didn't have surge pricing, you wouldn't be able to find an Uber, right? The riders benefit because they can still access their transportation services even though there's increasing demand. They may just have to pay a higher price to access that ride,
Yeah,
right?
riders just need to know better not to call an Uber from Times Square in New York on, midnight on
Yeah,
New
so this is a
Year's.
picture of the pricing levels of Uber in and around Wrigley Field when Dead and Company had a concert there back in, I think it was June 2019. But it's a good example of exactly where that dynamic pricing. The yellows are pricing of 2.5 times Uber's average, and the dark purple is sort of standard Uber pricing. You can see the intense colors right around Wrigley Field for those people that know Chicago, just as the concert was letting out right around 11:30 at night. So if you wanted to get a Uber in and around Wrigley Field at 11:30 on a Dead and Company concert, you paid a lot. But if they didn't have this surge pricing, if they didn't have this demand-based pricing, you wouldn't be able to find an Uber in and around Wrigley Field at 11:30 at night. So it was actually a good thing, even though people beat on Uber for this pricing model. So another pricing strategy is geographic-based pricing. And here you adjust the price of a product based on the geographic location of the customer. It recognizes that different regions have distinct market conditions, distinct consumer behaviors, economic factors that warrant current customized pricing. It may also be driven by differences in the cost of producing a product in a geography or in reaching customers in that geography, right? This geographic pricing allows businesses using it to be more responsive to some of the local market dynamics and enhance some of the competitiveness that they might have in different regions around the world. So I mentioned in my introduction that I actually started as a product manager at Kentucky Fried Chicken. We actually use geographic pricing. A lot of fast food restaurants, if you go in, you'll notice they do too. Prices in one area are different than prices in another. And it turns out that competitive conditions, they vary significantly across the United States. And believe it or not, the costs of acquiring and producing fried chicken can be very different depending on the location of the restaurant, right? Cost of labor is different. The cost of raw chicken can vary widely depending on the locale of that restaurant. So I remember I was working there and we were offering 10 pieces of fried chicken for $4.99 in the southwestern United States. That was near a bunch of chicken farms where we had a lot of fried chicken competition, and the labor to cook the chicken in those areas was relatively inexpensive. When I went and talked to some of my restaurant operators in New York City, they thought I was crazy. They were like, well, that price needs to be closer to $8.99 or $9.99, even as a promotional offering, right? Um, what it led to is meant it was really difficult for us to advertise a price for a special promotion on national TV, right? There we had to display the same price for that offering across the country. So oftentimes you'd see many fast food advertisements. If you're watching a network TV feed, you won't see a price, right? You probably don't know the difference between network and spot TV, but they have both, and some of the local TV advertisements is where they use their product pricing, not in the network TV feed. So if you're watching the Olympics, don't expect fast food restaurants to be advertising a price for their offering.
So Kenny, Lewis asked if geographic pricing is the same as cost-based pricing, just different costs. And I think Jason's actually answering that you can also segment your customers based on the geography. So it's,
Correct.
yeah,
It's a
exactly.
component of it, right? Your cost may be different for different geographies, and that's driving it. But it also geographic-based pricing takes more than cost into account. It can also take demand and competitive situations into account as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, thank you, Jason. Correct. Microsoft also does this, right? They adjust the pricing of their Office 365 based on geographic conditions. A lot of this is competitive scenarios and some of the regulations they have to face, right? Their prices may differ between countries or region, looks at market conditions, right? Prices for Office 365 can be twice as high in some regions as they are in some of the more competitive regions like the United States. So don't try to buy Office in India as an example. It might be slightly more expensive. All right. Those are the sort of 7 high-level strategies. As we saw and as mentioned, sometimes you're going to use them in combination, right? So the geographic includes some cost-based components to it. And you're going to use a variety of those to get your price done. But at least think about those and think about the impact they have on your product as you think about some of the strategic ways of pricing your product, right? So now that we have all that laid out there, let's start to talk about some basic strategies for injecting yourself into that decision process, right? And again, there are a lot of companies out there that posit that product management has no role in defining the pricing of their product, right? They believe that the sales team has the relationship with the customers. They know their pain points, price tolerance, all that, or that finance has a better sense of the total costs and can help set a price that maximizes the company's profitability. So if you're in such an organization, what can you do as a product manager to get a seat at the table? Well, your job as a seasoned and hopefully knowledgeable product manager, right, is to aggregate all of your customer and market-driven information to help some of these teams make data-based decisions, right? Information from sales, information from marketing, information from finance and operation, they're all relevant to making a right decision, right? But you've got some additional information. You've got customer insights that you've done from focus groups, meeting with customers, competitive analysis, other market research you've done, right? And it's your job to work with these teams to start to consolidate all the input, all the data, and bring that analysis to the right people so that they see you as a thought partner, a collaborative person to work with on pricing your product. So go out of your way to have regular discussions with all these stakeholders about your product, its value proposition, and potential pricing approaches, right? Share how some of your pricing decisions impact your product and ask when and how some of these pricing decisions are made. You can provide data-driven insights. It'll elevate your credibility, it'll open the door for you to be a more active member in some of the pricing decisions about your product, right? And so pricing, while complicated and many times intricate, it's surely a muscle that you as a product manager need to flex and develop. Hopefully what we've talked about in the last 40 minutes or so has provided some insight And some of that exercise to help you stretch that muscle and get more invited, get invited more often, and on board to that pricing decision party, right? Or at least to the hotel where that party's being held. So,
So
go ahead.
yeah, Kenny. So I do want to kind of stress this, that there are situations where you're going to be left out of the room and you know about
Yeah.
it. And so I think what we're trying to say here is you actually are a very valuable asset to your company. And so you need to make that asset visible. And there are ways to do that. Shankar, I want to kind of answer your question using, so Shankar asked, if we could discuss an example of conjoint analysis.
Yeah.
So conjoint analysis, we're not going to go into it, but it's basically a survey methodology where you show it's like almost like A/B testing in real time with customers of feature A, feature B, and you're trying to, by doing a lot of these tests, understand where the value is perceived from your customer. That Western door pricing, there's a lot of ways for you to do analysis of your market's willingness to pay, and especially for value-based pricing. That one's the hardest, right? To do value-based pricing, you need to understand what does value mean again. So if you can lead some of these, not alone, but lead some of these initiatives at your company that might not be happening today, that actually puts you at the seat of your own table, and it'll draw, I think, attention to you as a product manager and attention to the value that you bring to this discussion.
Yeah, a lot of it is just understand what the pricing impact has in your product, some of the customers' perspectives on pricing, and bring those to some of your discussions with stakeholders so they start to trust you. And again, you don't have to be the decision maker. And in many instances, I don't want you to be the decision maker, because you're going to have to get these perspectives of what sales doing at a certain time, or marketing's doing at a certain time, or the impact finance has on cost and profitability and all those kinds of things, right? But at least get that seat at the table where you're involved, where you're part of the discussion and not left out all the time, which I
So
think
if
a
you
lot of
are
people
being left out, aside from maybe leading an initiative, I think we also spoke about measuring the impact of other people's decisions.
are. Yep.
So can you do that to then bring back to your leadership and say, here are the impacts to product? And I want to like say, use that, what is it? The formula that we showed up front of what do you want my job to be? And here's the impacts of what's happening in my organization.
Do you want me to be the value creator? I need to understand the cost. I need to understand the price in order to be that value creator for the product. All right, Rena, you've got an offer for folks, right?
I do. Okay. So we're about to jump into Q&A. I did want to mention that we cover pricing in greater depth in our digital product management course. I think we actually even covered in our optimal product management course. I had a question here from someone who's anonymous saying they're looking to switch to product management. What would I recommend? Listen, our courses are going to be very helpful. Absolutely. We have a lot of career switchers who attend our classes, but it's also going to be about getting up to speed about what are the expectations of product management in your company, and do you have that skill set? Do you want that job? So in terms of career switchers, I would talk to a lot of people who are product managers today at the companies you're looking to get into, and see what skill areas they shine in. And then think about if you can get those skills. One great way to do that, we put together a curriculum specifically for product managers. Our digital product management course is a little bit more advanced, and then our optimal product management course teaches you the core skills for any product manager.
Yep.
Here it is a core syllabus for digital product management. Go to the next slide, Kenny.
Yep.
Right now, we are offering a pretty good sale, especially on the digital product management course. You can get it now for just around $3,000 to be live taught with our very own Joe Gali. But we have a number of other courses available, optimal product management, and also our Agile course and our AI course if you're looking to get up to speed on how to use ChatGPT and other AI technology in your product. Now, so sorry, the code was get
Website.
more done 250
Oh, yeah.
for 250 off all of the courses at Productside. Now let's go into Q&A. We have a number of questions. I want to take these in turn. So we actually had a couple more about geographic pricing. And so let's go answer those. So Skip asked, how much does local cost of living figure into geographic pricing?
It has a variety of factors. One is it impacts customers' willingness and ability to pay. And it may impact your costs to bring the product to them, right? So those are all things to think about. And if you've got widely varying cost of livings or those kind of things in different areas, you may want to have geographic pricing because it's going to be a component of the cost that you put into that product and also the affordability of the product in a specific locale.
I do see that a lot, not just for those who are selling globally, that definitely comes into play sometimes. It also depends on the cost of your services. So if you're manufacturing in the US, for example, you have specific costs, especially additional transportation costs when you go international, so you may not be able to do that. Also, it might not be cost of living if you're selling to a specific persona that doesn't have as much variability based on where they're living.
Yeah, that cost of living could factor into even, if you've got labor and those kind of things, it's going to factor into your cost of production, right?
Yeah,
Again,
and then Luhane, I think I'm saying your name right, is asking if it's at all related to GDP, gross domestic
um,
product.
okay, again, the GDP is going to be the ability of the customer to pay, right? If you go to a very, vis-a-vis the US, you go to a very low GDP country that people are earning, $100 per year, you're probably not likely to charge the same price for your product in that locale as you do in the US because their ability to pay may not be the same. So you may have to lower the price and hopefully the cost is lower. Or you may decide that we can't compete in that geography because the GDP is too low.
Yeah, that's also possible. Okay, so I want to go back to in the chat, we had Simon asking if, I think this question's a little, I can take this one, Kenny, to
Sure.
start. If you lead with pricing, doesn't it become a transactional conversation than a negotiation? Shouldn't pricing be the last thing that you talk about rather than the value? I think what we're discussing here is actually the sales process. And it really depends, again, what your sales process is. For companies, when you're selling a solution, which could have a lot of, which has essentially like an enterprise AE team. Yes, you always want to start with value first. You want to understand what problem are you solving? How much does that problem cost the customer? And does your solution fit? Can they actually get ROI from it? If you're selling online and you oftentimes you'll have a pricing page, customers want to compare pricing when they do their own research if they don't want to talk to a salesperson. So it really depends on the customer journey there rather than the pricing strategy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's what's the approach to pricing, right? And it makes sense to put your pricing on the web. There are some competitive issues with that because suddenly your competitors know your pricing as well. And your flexibility on negotiations may be more difficult.
Correct. Okay, so we have a couple more. One is, how do you identify the most suitable pricing strategy for your product? I think you kind of talked about it throughout the presentation.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's going to be trial and error on this one. Don't be afraid to test pricing. Particularly, I use the example of Amazon, right? Their price for their price for Amazon Prime, right? Has a huge impact on the profitability of Amazon because if they raise that price by $20 per year, that's $20 times how the over 1 billion customers they have for that. That's going to have a huge impact on their quarterly revenue. But it's also risky if they lose people. So they tend to be very careful about changing their prices in that scenario. They'll often change the price in some remote area where it has less impact and some geographic locale where they don't have a lot of traction already to check a higher price and see what's the impact of that have on customers. Does it reduce the Prime subscriptions? So they're doing a lot of testing around pricing as well.
I would say that the most common problem is not the people testing different pricing strategies, is that they don't test at all.
Right.
Yeah, it's especially for businesses, they get scared of what if I change and anger some of my customers and all of that. But it's a learning it's a learning exercise, and you need to test and experiment.
Yep.
Okay, we have a couple more questions, and I know we're running out of time, so I want to get to PD. says that one of the challenges they're having in their role is getting pricing about competitive solutions. What are some resources that can help with that data, especially when launching new products or pivoting to a new market?
Um, if you've got customers or distributors, talk to them. You'd be surprised how much information they'll tell you about competitive offerings and competitive prices. So that's a good way to get the information. Analysts can work sometimes, especially in brand new markets that don't have a lot of opportunities or new market channels. You may have employees that used to work for that competitor. They may know what the pricing sheets look like as well. So there's lots of opportunities there. And Brina, you have any others?
Yeah, I have a few. So one thing that I know people do, okay, it's up to you whether or not you think this is okay. I think it is. Sometimes you can ask former employees of your competitors if they're willing to have coffee or virtual coffee, what have you, with you to discuss their former employer. Sometimes that works. You can also do secret shopping. So if you have anybody in your network who fits the customer profile, they might be willing to go into a sales process, for you. Okay. I see some other, yeah, book customer interviews with converts. Yes, that's another one. Absolutely. So talk to people. Uh, Last question.
Yeah.
What would be a good strategy for deciding on tiered pricing?
Um, in order to do tiered pricing, you have to make sure that there's tiered customers, right? You have customers either with different see, it's one of those value-based strategies, right? Because you're trying to put different value for different customers. So are there customers who perceive different values, or are there customers who have different willingness or ability to pay for your product? There you may want to have tiered pricing for those customers,
Yeah,
right?
I would, for that one, I would say have one price for the product and then have a discount schedule that is approved. And that gives you a little bit more information as to what are the common discounts and why, rather than it can get really complicated if you have a lot of prices per SKU in your company. So just be
Yeah.
wary of that.
Yeah, and tiered pricing can also work well for web-based or digital type products where you have
Mm.
varying levels of the product. Again, don't have too many because you'll overcomplicate it, but have enough where if you can create a use case that's targeted at a specific segment or personas of customers, create a great tier for that, and you can start to extract value from those folks and start to build combinations across them.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you learned something, and I really genuinely hope you can get a seat at that pricing table. You deserve one. Earn it if you don't have it, because you can. For more webinars and content, visit us, of course, at productside.com. I think our next webinar is going to be towards the end of this month, where we're going to be talking about how you can think about getting your next promotion. So very much a career-focused webinar, but we hope to see you again there.
Thank you, Rena. Thanks for everybody for attending.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.